You've probably asked yourself at some point, am I entitled to a paid break or a lunch break at work? Maybe you're on your feet for hours, waiting for that 30 minutes to catch your breath, and wondering if the law requires your employer to pay you, or even give you a break at all. Here's the surprising truth. Under federal law, employers are not required to provide meal or rest breaks at all. But if they do, certain rules apply about whether that time is paid or unpaid. And on top of that, many states, like California, New York, and Washington, have their own strict rules that go far beyond the federal standard. In this video, I'll break it down clearly. What federal law says, what your state may add, and what you can do if your boss is denying you breaks you're entitled to. Part 1. What federal law says about breaks. Let's start with the basics. The Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, the main federal law governing wages and hours, does not require employers to provide meal or rest breaks. That surprises a lot of people. Unlike overtime and minimum wage, which are federally mandated, breaks are not guaranteed at the federal level. But here's the catch. If your employer chooses to provide short breaks, the law controls how they're handled. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, short breaks, lasting 20 minutes or less, must be paid. That's because they're considered part of the workday, designed to keep employees fresh and productive. So, if you take a 10-minute coffee break, that's on the clock. On the other hand, bona fide meal periods, usually 30 minutes or more, do not have to be paid as long as you are completely relieved of work duties during that time. For example, if you clock out for a 30-minute lunch and are free to leave your workstation, your employer doesn't have to pay you. But if you're required to eat at your desk and keep answering phones, that's not a true meal break. It must be paid. Federal law also addresses situations where breaks are interrupted. If your supervisor asks you to handle a customer call in the middle of your unpaid lunch, that interruption may turn the whole period into compensable time. The rule is that employees must be completely relieved of duty for the meal period to be unpaid. One more point. Employers cannot manipulate break policies to undercut pay. For instance, they can't automatically deduct 30 minutes for lunch if you actually worked through that time. Automatic deductions are a common source of wage theft, and courts have repeatedly ruled in favor of employees when breaks were recorded but not actually taken. So under federal law, breaks are not required, but if they are given, short breaks must be paid, and meal breaks only go unpaid if you are truly relieved of all duties. Part 2. State laws. Stronger protections in places like California and New York. While federal law doesn't require meal or rest breaks, many states have stepped in to fill the gap with stronger worker protections. If you live in one of these states, your rights go far beyond the FLSA's minimum. Let's start with California, which has some of the most detailed break laws in the country. Under California's labor code, employees are entitled to a 30-minute unpaid meal break if they work more than 5 hours in a day. If you work more than 10 hours, you must get a second 30-minute meal break. These breaks are unpaid as long as you are fully relieved of duties. But here's the key. If your employer fails to provide a proper meal break, they owe you 1 additional hour of pay at your regular rate for each day the violation occurs. California also requires paid rest breaks, 10 minutes for every 4 hours worked, or major fraction thereof. So, if you work an 8-hour shift, you're entitled to 2 paid 10-minute rest periods, in addition to your meal break. These rest breaks must be uninterrupted, and you should be free to leave your work area. Now let's look at New York. New York law requires meal periods for employees who work a certain number of consecutive hours. For example, factory workers must get at least 60 minutes for a midday meal if their shift is longer than 6 hours. Non-factory workers get at least 30 minutes between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. if they work more than 6 hours over that time. Additional shorter breaks may be required for late shifts. Unlike California, New York's laws focus more on meal periods than short rest breaks, but the protections are still stronger than federal law. Other states with similar rules include Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and Massachusetts. Washington requires a 30-minute unpaid meal break if you work more than 5 hours, plus paid rest breaks. Oregon requires a 30-minute meal break for shifts longer than 6 hours, and 10-minute paid rest breaks for every 4 hours worked. Colorado's rules apply to specific industries, but they still mandate meal and rest breaks for many employees. These state laws often include penalties if employers fail to provide the required breaks. For example, in California, lawsuits over missed meal and rest breaks are common, and employers who violate the rules can owe significant back pay and damages. The takeaway is this: depending on where you live, you may have powerful rights to both meal and rest breaks, sometimes paid, sometimes unpaid, but always legally enforceable. Employers in those states cannot legally deny you those breaks, and if they do, they risk serious penalties. Part 3. Special rules for certain industries. Break and meal rules don't just vary by state, they can also depend on your industry. Some jobs have special break requirements because of safety concerns, union contracts, or unique work conditions. Take healthcare workers, for example. Nurses and hospital staff often work 12-hour shifts, and state laws recognize the need for rest. In California, healthcare workers are entitled to the same meal and rest breaks as other employees, but because of the nature of patient care, there are detailed rules about how breaks can be staggered or waived. Employers must still ensure that breaks are provided, or they face penalties. In trucking and transportation, federal regulations from the Department of Transportation, DOT, require drivers to take mandatory rest breaks for safety reasons. For example, interstate truck drivers must take a 30-minute break after driving 8 cumulative hours. While these rules are about safety, not pay, they show how federal regulations sometimes intersect with workplace break requirements. The food and beverage industry is another area where break rules are critical. Restaurant servers, cooks, and baristas are often pushed to skip breaks during busy hours. But in states like California and Oregon, rest breaks cannot simply be ignored because it's busy. Employers must provide them, even if it means staggering shifts or bringing in additional staff. Courts have repeatedly ruled that too busy is not an excuse. Unionized workplaces also bring another layer of protection. Collective bargaining agreements often guarantee specific paid breaks or meal periods, sometimes even more generous than state law. For example, a union contract in manufacturing might guarantee 2 15-minute paid breaks and a 30-minute paid lunch, even though state law would allow an unpaid meal. In union environments, these contractual rights are enforceable like law. In retail and warehouse settings, lawsuits have frequently targeted companies that automatically deducted meal breaks, even when employees were forced to work through them. Courts have held that if an employee is not fully relieved of duty, like a cashier told to eat at the register while watching customers, the break must be paid. Lastly, in emergency services, like police officers, firefighters, and EMTs, meal and rest breaks are often interrupted by the urgent nature of the job. Courts recognize that constant interruptions may make breaks compensable, meaning the employee must be paid for that time. The bottom line is this: your break rights may depend heavily on your industry. Healthcare, transportation, retail, food service, and emergency services all have specific rules or legal cases shaping how breaks are treated. And in most situations, if you're still working or on call during your break, that time must be paid. Part 4. Common employer violations and legal consequences. Even in states with clear break laws, violations are incredibly common. Many employers either misunderstand the rules or, in some cases, deliberately ignore them to squeeze more productivity out of workers. Let's look at the most frequent violations. A common one is automatic meal deductions. Some companies program timekeeping systems to deduct 30 minutes for lunch every shift, whether or not the employee actually took it. If you were asked to work through lunch, or if your break was interrupted, those automatic deductions can add up to significant unpaid wages. Courts have repeatedly ruled that this practice violates the law if workers weren't fully relieved of duty. Another violation is discouraging or denying breaks altogether. For example, managers may tell employees, "We're too busy today, so no breaks." In California, that's a clear violation. Employers must provide rest and meal periods regardless of business needs. Even if employees agree to skip breaks, the employer can still be penalized because the duty to provide them is non-negotiable. Interruptions during breaks are also a big issue. If a worker is forced to answer phones, watch the register, or help customers while eating lunch, that's not a real break. It's compensable time. The Department of Labor has made it clear that employees must be completely relieved of duties for meal periods to be unpaid. Some employers also misclassify workers to avoid giving breaks. They may call someone a manager or independent contractor, when in reality, they're non-exempt employees entitled to the protections. Misclassification is one of the most common strategies used to cut corners on both breaks and overtime. The legal consequences can be steep. In California, missed meal or rest breaks require employers to pay an extra hour of wages for each day a violation occurs. That adds up quickly if dozens of employees are affected. In New York and other states, lawsuits over denied breaks have resulted in millions in back pay and damages. Under the federal FLSA, failure to pay for interrupted or off-the-clock breaks is treated as wage theft, and employers may owe back pay plus liquidated damages, essentially doubling the amount owed. For workers, this means you don't have to simply accept a culture of skipped or unpaid breaks. The law is clear. If breaks are required by your state, or if you are still working during your break, your employer must compensate you. Companies that ignore these rules are not only stealing wages, they're opening themselves up to lawsuits, penalties, and reputational damage. Part 5. How workers can protect their rights and real-life examples. Understanding your rights is the first step, but protecting them in real life requires action. The good news is, you don't have to navigate this alone. Laws and agencies are designed to back you up when employers cut corners on breaks. Start with documentation. Keep track of your shifts, including when you actually took breaks and when you were forced to work through them. Note interruptions, like answering phones or helping customers during a supposed meal period. If your employer uses automatic time deductions, your records can help prove that you weren't truly off duty. Second, compare your notes with your pay stubs. If your paycheck always reflects a 30-minute deduction, but you know you rarely got a full break, that's a red flag. Courts often side with employees if the employer's records are incomplete or inaccurate. Third, raise the issue internally. Sometimes violations happen because of poor training or a misunderstanding of the law. Bringing the problem to HR or management can resolve it quickly. But if it doesn't, you have options. You can file a complaint with your state labor department or the U.S. Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division, DUHD. These agencies investigate claims and can order employers to pay back wages and penalties. Many states, like California and Massachusetts, even add extra damages on top of unpaid wages, turning a small claim into a much larger financial consequence for the employer. There are also class action lawsuits where groups of employees join together to recover unpaid wages. These are common in retail, healthcare, and food service industries where break violations are systemic. For example, nurses in several states have successfully sued hospitals for automatically deducting meal breaks, even when patient care forced them to work through lunch. In one case, a Hospital system paid millions to settle claims from staff who had been shorted on pay for years. Another well-known case involved fast food workers who were denied legally required rest breaks. The courts sided with the workers, awarding not just back pay, but also penalty wages for every missed break. These cases send a clear message. Denying or interrupting breaks isn't just unfair, it's expensive for employers. The bottom line, you protect yourself by keeping records, knowing your state's rules, and speaking up. If you are denied proper breaks, the law is on your side, and history shows that workers who fight back often win. So, are you entitled to paid breaks or lunch breaks at work? The answer depends on where you live and what kind of work you do. Federal law doesn't guarantee breaks, but if they're provided, short breaks under 20 minutes must be paid, and meal breaks only go unpaid if you're completely relieved of duty. Many states, like California, New York, and Washington, go much further, requiring meal and rest breaks and penalizing employers who don't comply. If you're being denied proper breaks, or if you're forced to work through them without pay, remember, that's wage theft and the law is on your side. Keep records, compare your notes with your paychecks, and don't hesitate to file a complaint if necessary. If this video helped clear things up, hit like, share it with your coworkers, and subscribe for more plain English breakdowns of workplace laws. And in the comments, do you actually get your breaks at work?